All right, we're now back with Nashville SC goalkeeper Joe Willis. Joe, a little bit of a homecoming for you this weekend. St. Louis native, I think maybe your first game there since high school or somewhere around then. So if you want to start just talking about what that experience will be like for you, and then of course what the kind of mindset of the team is here heading into the stretch run of the season.
Yeah, it'll be a fun game. Obviously, I'll have a lot of family there, some friends there, but ultimately, it's just another game for us. We're approaching it that way. Our objective is very clear that we're trying to get 3 points. We've had a pretty successful year so far, and we're pushing for trophies, whether that's the MLS Cup or whether that's Supporters Shield, and we're in a position right now that we are able to win every competition we're competing in. So we're looking at this like just another game and another opportunity to get 3 points.
Thanks, Joe. We'll put on the line again, start with Julian and ask two if you'd like.
I read that your uncles had a huge part of your soccer career. How important were they influencing you in a place where baseball is kind of king over there?
Yeah, they were both soccer players themselves. One of them played professionally for the Chicago Sting back in the NASL days and the minor league or the indoor leagues. But yeah, they were a huge influence on my brother and myself. They kind of introduced us to the game. My dad played a lot of sports, but he didn't play soccer, so they were a big part of that. And having an older brother who took to the sport at a young age definitely influenced me as well.
What was it like when people are maybe kids growing up, maybe playing baseball or hockey and then say, "Oh, I'm a soccer player"? What was kind of the reaction you get there?
I mean, to be fair, first off, I played every sport growing up too. I played baseball, hockey, soccer, basketball, volleyball. But St. Louis is such a big soccer city that youth soccer, especially when I was growing up, because we didn't really have a professional team. No offense to the St. Louis Ambush, the indoor league team that we had. But yeah, a lot of kids played soccer growing up in St. Louis and continue to do so. And it just has such a rich history in soccer that they've always been a great city for that. And to finally have an MLS team is something really cool and something that I'm, happy for all my friends and family who still live there.
Yeah, Joe, I was going to ask about that. I mean, St. Louis has kind of been like one of the main soccer cities for a while in the U.S., like going back several decades. What do you think about it, like, has kind of lent itself to, I mean, just being a place where a lot of soccer players come from?
Yeah, I think it's just the history. I think if you go back to the early 1900s when there were a lot of Italian and German immigrants there, they kind of took over, and the game, they introduced the game to the city, and there were just a lot of different moments throughout history. You look back at the World Cup game where the U.S. beat England, and that was such a huge deal. I think, a lot of that team was from St. Louis, and then leading up, I know there's a lot of different teams that won Open Cups there, and I remember St. Louis University in the 70s went on a run where they won the national championship a ton of times. So I think, all of those things just add to it and breed a community that loves the game, and that has trickled down from generation to generation and continues to do so. And so I think, that's a big part of it is just knowing your city's history and what's happened there.
And then you mentioned just being alive in kind of all 3 competitions that you're competing for. I know you've been, you've made runs in the MLS playoffs and Leagues Cup in the past, but it feels like at this point in the season, this is the closest you've been, at least towards the Supporters Shield table. What do you feel like it does anything different for you guys mentally, just knowing that there's like tangible things to fight for?
Yeah, for sure. I think this year, more than any year in my career, what I'm seeing is a mentality that guys are almost addicted to winning. So I've been on teams in the past where you win a game, maybe you win 3 games in a row, and it's cool, and then you kind of take your foot off the gas because you have that to rely on, and you kind of hope maybe you make the playoffs, and then anything can happen. But with this team and the mentality that we have, we want to win every game, and we believe we can win every game. And we've had a lot of success. So we've kind of proven to ourselves that we can win big games against difficult opponents at home, on the road, in difficult environments. And I think we all have that belief, especially now we have 9 regular season games left. We're so close to it that we're not taking our foot off the pedal. We're going to keep pushing, knowing how close we are and knowing what we can achieve.
Joe, what do you see in the St. Louis team?
It's a team that can be unpredictable. You know, they are, if you look at the standings, they're struggling a little bit right now. They've had an up and down year. They've had a coaching change. They've been plagued with injuries for a while, but they have a lot of those guys back. So they have a lot of pieces that can hurt you. They have a very difficult atmosphere and environment at that stadium. So they're a dangerous team. They're a team with guys who have a lot to play for. They're playing for their jobs. They're playing for their reputation. Whether they're playing for a trophy or not in this, it doesn't really matter. They still have something to play for, and that makes a dangerous team.
Joe, going from the summer, last 3 months really, where you've had multiple games almost every week, to now where you finish off the last 9 games of the season, basically the game every weekend, kind of just less congested schedule. How different is that how different is that for your preparation for each game? Is it more like like it was at the beginning of the year?
Yeah, it's nice because you get a little more time. There's pros and cons to each. But I think the benefit of having a less congested schedule is you have more time to prepare for each individual opponent. So, we've done 4 days we will have done 4 days of preparation on St. Louis leading into the game, which is, not always the case. So hopefully we'll be as prepared as possible, knowing what they like to do on the ball and knowing how we can exploit their weaknesses and go after them.
What was it like watching Brian and Xavier share the net against Aston Villa? And I guess what, if anything, maybe did you have to offer them as feedback or just any congratulations or anything like that after the game?
Yeah, to be honest, I didn't really say much, but I don't think they needed it. They're both excellent goalkeepers, and that's the nature of the position, is that only one can play per game. So you don't always get opportunities to show how good you are. I think they're both incredible, and I'm glad that they were able to get a real opportunity to show everyone.
Joe, you talked a little bit about preparation for specific opponents. BJ was just talking about like one-on-one matchups on the field and stuff like that. But what does that look like for a goalkeeper, for opponents? Is there anything specific you do per opponent other than maybe like penalty, I guess? Okay.
Yeah, we watch videos on different attacking players that they have and what tendencies they have. Is this a guy who likes to run in behind? Is this a guy who likes to drop off and create plays more? Do they drift to the back post? They drift to the near post? Different tendencies like that. We also look at how they press and how we can break that down when we're building out of the back. So there's several things like that that you can look at and take information from in preparation.
And then there's sort of a divide in American soccer between the Supporters' Shield and MLS Cup, and what does each one mean? What's your take on it, I guess, and which one would you prefer, I guess?
I prefer both. I think in America we love playoffs, so I think the MLS Cup probably still holds more weight in our league. So I guess if I had to choose, I would take the MLS Cup. But that being said, we want to win every game. I want to win every game. I want to win as many trophies as possible. So it's not just about trying to make the playoffs and hoping for the best. It's about making a real statement and showing the rest of the league and the country what kind of team we are.
I forgot to ask earlier.
Yeah.
Do you have a favorite soccer memory growing up?
Favorite soccer
Out there in
memory
St. Louis.
growing up? Wow. In St. Louis, probably playing for my club team growing up. it was called Scott Gallagher, and I think the first time we ever won like state cup, it was like the state championship. I think that was probably my favorite memory because it was something as a kid who, you know, I watched older kids play in, and it was really cool just to be able to say we're the best team in the state. And I think it was probably seventh or eighth grade when that happened. I will say my worst memory of St. Louis soccer was when I was in high school. I was a sophomore, and I hadn't really been playing on the varsity team. This was with the high school team, and I hadn't really been playing on the varsity team very much. And we made it to the state championship, and I ended up playing in the state championship, and we got beat pretty bad, 3-0, in front of all my friends and family, and it was a terrible experience. But something I learned from, and yeah, but more good memories than bad memories, I'll say.
All right, thanks so much, Joe. Thank you guys.
Thank you guys.